Hello and welcome to the programme. People in Israel are voting in parliamentary elections, with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu aiming to become the country's longest-serving leader. Now, opinion polls published at the end of last week suggest that his Likud party is trailing a centre-left alliance, and the race has been much tighter than expected. In his campaign, Mr. Netanyahu has focused on national security. Well, let's take a look at live images of people voting. Of course, they're choosing between Likud and that side, and also the opposition, the Zionist Union, which is led by Yitzhak Herzog and by Tzipi Livni. Now, they have accused Benjamin Netanyahu of trying to distract from domestic problems such as the high cost of living, amongst other things. Let's cross over live to Jerusalem. Our correspondent Mark Lowen is covering the election for us. And Mark, we're expecting initial results at around 10, but of course it could be a long time before we get the full coalition lineup.
It's just the start of a long few weeks of coalition building, Kasia, because whoever wins today won't be able to govern alone. They might have to cobble together 4 or 5 parties in a coalition. And that is where Benjamin Netanyahu really has an advantage, because even though he's behind in the opinion polls, trailing his opposition, the centre-left Zionist Union, there are simply more parties on the right and the centre-right that are willing to go into coalition with him. So he may still end up as the Prime Minister, even if he loses in today's vote. So all to play for. And a lot of parties contesting today's election. Let's speak to 2 supporters from 2 of the different parties. Shimon Posner, who is a supporter and voter of Likud, Benjamin Netanyahu's party, and Karen Abrahams from the far-left party, Meretz. Shimon Posner, first of all, Benjamin Netanyahu has been Prime Minister for 6 years consecutively. Isn't it time for a change?
No, I don't think it's time for a change. I think it's time for him to have more power in his hands to do more of what the right believes to be factual for the good of Israel.
And what do you believe he needs to do, and what is attractive about his policies for you?
Well, I think the basis of his facts are more accurate than the other side of the population of Israel. I think his facts are based on real historical facts, and I think that his beliefs toward the population in Israel are more accurate than the left side of the people.
Karen Abrahams from the far-left party, Meretz. It's a small party, your party. Why are you supporting Meretz?
I support Meretz because Meretz has the strongest track record of any party of standing up for human rights and social justice in Israel. Meretz believes more than any other party and has fought for legislation to promote the rights of all of Israel's citizens. A country that does not protect all of its citizens cannot call itself democratic.
And if you're voting for a small left party, presumably, in the bigger picture, you would want Yitzhak Herzog to be Prime Minister, the leader of the left-wing Zionist Union. What attracts you over Benjamin Netanyahu?
What attracts me to Herzog over Benjamin Netanyahu, I do think it's time for a change. I do not think that Bibi has promoted Israel's best interest over time, both domestically and internationally, and I do believe it is time for a change.
Well, that's the point, isn't it, Shimon Posner? Because his critics say that Benjamin Netanyahu's led Israel to very poor relations with the US, that he led Israel into war in Gaza with very little to say for it after the war last year, that the cost of living has soared here. So there are plenty of criticisms of him.
There are criticisms of anybody from the opponent's side, but if you look at each point individually, I think you'll see that without having enough power in the Knesset, he's done far more than anybody else could have done and achieved with such little power.
But what about, I mean, for example, yesterday he said in an interview that there'd be no Palestinian state under his watch. I mean, that's not going to go down well with the international community.
Well, the international community is very important to Israel, but and politically correct is very important in the world. But at the end of the day, a nation has to worry about its necessities before it worries about world opinion.
Okay, and Karen, I mean, do you think that Yitzhak Herzog is going to be able to build a coalition? The numbers are simply against him, aren't they?
Time will tell. It's too early, but we're hoping for the best.
Karen Abrahams, Shimon Posner, thank you very much indeed. So all to play for in this election, but it could take up to 6-7 weeks even to try to cobble together a coalition afterwards to reach the over 61 seats needed in the parliament. The big issues at play, the cost of living, the cost of housing, but also, of course, Israel's security. And that is where Benjamin Netanyahu is campaigning hard. He says he is the man to protect Israel against the external threats. His critics say that the domestic issues, the bread and butter issues, are where his weakness lies, and that is where they're hoping that they will be able to steal the march today and win this election.
Fascinating stuff, Mark Lowen. As always, thank you very much, Mark Lowen, covering the Israeli election in Jerusalem for us. Of course, there is lots more on our website there. You can find out about the key candidates, what the vote will mean for Benjamin Netanyahu's future. Of course, we heard there he is campaigning for that 4th term, and also where this vote will leave the peace process, the all-important peace process. All of that and more on our website, bbc.com.